Starting with you.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. The time being 10:42, we'll get started. 9:42. I'm going to open the work session on HB 450. All right, we have 4 amendments on HB 450, and I'd like to call up Keen Wong to
Good morning. My name is Keen Ming Wong, Tax Policy Counsel of the DRA.
Thank you, Keen. What I'd like to have you do is, we have 4 amendments before us for HB 450. We have 2272H, 2273H, 2274H, and 2290H. If you could just go through each of those briefly and tell us what each one does, that'd be great.
I don't believe I have 90.
Uh,
And I do have
twen-
506, which is Shamrock's, but I think it's pretty much the same as one of yours.
So those 4, the first 3 I mentioned were passed out last time. 2290, I thought went out in email. What it does is there was a DRA. Well, I'll let King
Okay.
explain what it is. It's yeah.
Okay. So the previous from the previous work session, the discussions were on 2272H, 2273H, and 2274H. So the 2272H was amendments to line 7 through 9 and line 26, which is to remove the 80%.
Yes, Representative.
Yes, the underlying bill removes the 80%, so what does this do differently?
No, this is just removes the 80%, and then it's on line 26 as an additional amendment there to apply that removal of the 80% to non-C Corp organizations as well. Yep.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. I'm still not quite understanding. There is added in a reference to A120, which is apparently what is referred to in as adjusted, which I didn't understand why that was there at all. And on A120 is just referring specifically to the section that says that we are complying in general with IRC 2018.
Representative, are you referring to the 2272H?
Yeah, wasn't that what you were just talking
Yes.
about? Yeah.
Right. So the amendment to line 26 is just to encapsulate the to make sure that the removal of the 80% does apply to the non-C Corp organizations as well.
I didn't even see that in 20. Where does that show up in the law? That they don't apply to the C Corp, to the
So
non-C Corp?
the federal IRC 172, federal IRC NOL deduction, it is IRC 172, is applicable to C Corps only. And so because in New Hampshire, with all the business organizations, no matter C Corp or LLC or
Right.
what have you, so treated equally. And the attempt on line 26 is just to make sure that it's clear that this removal of the 80% cap as an adjustment as opposed to a limited. So the original language here is and as limited by this section. So right now, the removal of the 80% cap is not really a limitation; it's more of an adjustment. So that's why we thought that having this language here would make it clearer. And it's just to clarify that.
That it is in fact treated equally across
Yes, that's
all
right,
of the
yeah.
businesses
Mhm.
somewhere in A1 or somewhere in our code.
Right. The removal of the 80% cap is when it says that
No, yeah,
except in determining the amount of the NOL deduction, a business organization shall not be subject to any taxable income limitation under the 172.
right.
So-
But I'm asking about the non-C corps. Where is that found in our?
No, so
Tax
we
law.
don't have that. So, but it's on the federal IRC.
Oh well, so I take it for granted that that works, I guess.
All right, continue.
So that was 2272H. So for Amendment 2273H, the amendment was on line 14, which is the change in the limitation of the NOL carryover limited to 10 years, extended that to 20 years.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. So we're about to switch a lot of the people that are paying BPT. And we'll have a lot of new people who are paying it who weren't paying, or some at least, that weren't paying it before. The way this is going to work is that their federal losses will be carried with them to us from
Right.
the past.
Yes. So that was the discussion in the last work session was with the change from the 10 years to 20 years. How about those business organizations who are just on the border and then now it's being extended to 20 years? So that's when that's being addressed with the new amendment 2290H. I don't
the
have a
one
copy of that amendment.
That
I'm
we
sorry.
don't have.
Yeah,
You're the only one with a copy.
we could have this copied. Right, so 2290 makes it clear that for taxable periods ending on or after December 31st, 2024, net operating losses can be carried forward for 20 years. So
Right.
that implies that previous to that, those losses can only go 10 years.
Correct.
So that's the change of this. That was a question. I don't know if you brought it up or somebody brought up last time. Yeah, what happens to those people that are in the midst of a 10-year carry forward and suddenly it's 20? So really 2290 kind of makes 2273 obsolete in the sense that, or it clarifies 2273. So it's even if we decided we wanted all these things, 2290 is the clarification
Right.
of 2273.
Okay.
Okay.
And so businesses that we never taxed before, but they're selling into New Hampshire, right now would be carrying their loss records from the federal government with them to us, and we abandon anything before 10 years when we're calculating until we get 10 years out and everybody is on the same page.
I'm not getting that part about the businesses that we're not taxing before are being taxed now.
On
How's
the single sales factor,
okay?
the
Right.
businesses that didn't qualify before but
Mhm.
do qualify now, we are told that there are at least going to be some of them to replace the money we're losing from
Right.
a lot of other places.
Yes. So for the new business organizations that will be taxable in New Hampshire, the 2290H would the amendments in 2290H says that NOLs that only may be kept for 20 years for taxable periods ending on or after December 31, 2024. So any of the losses that's generated taxable periods ending on or after 2024 would be subject to the 20-year
Yeah.
carry forward.
But they'll bring their histories with them,
Yeah, no, yeah.
even though the loss wasn't here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you brought up a point that you mentioned the word obsolete for 73H. Is it, or are you saying that?
Well, it's not obsolete, but 2290 attempts to clarify 2273.
Thank you.
Representative Platt.
Yes, Mr. Wong, are there any businesses who've used the full 10 years for net operating loss carry forward?
We tried to research on that. We are not able to come up with a definitive answer. The collection of the data does not track that way.
Cyril,
Cyril, Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, thank you for taking my question. So do we have an idea which businesses would impact New Hampshire and what the dollar impact might be?
We do have an idea on the dollar amounts, but which businesses, essentially all businesses will be able to, all businesses are able to claim the net NOL deductions. So in terms of the dollar amount, hang on. So I'm referring to the tax expenditure report, the latest tax expenditure report that was sent out. This was prepared in December of 22. Every year, the DRA prepares a tax expenditure report and issues it in December timeframe. So the latest one that's out there is the December 22 report. And for fiscal year 22, the net operating loss that the tax that's decreased by the usage of net operating loss was about $36 million.
Okay. 2274.
So Amendment 2274 is an amendment to remove the $10 million cap on the carry forwards, as it's currently the NOL deductions carryover limited to $10 million. So this amendment is trying to address that.
Okay. Any questions? Representative Almy.
And it's just on, I think I remember that we have no way of knowing how much loss we'd be seeing that we'd have to pay for if we do this.
Yes, that's correct. We unfortunately we are not able to track that information.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Wong, then are you saying that it's the federal amount that we would use unlimited if this is removed?
That is correct. So the taxpayers who are claiming net operating losses, they will be, if just only this amendment, they'll be claiming whatever losses they can claim in any current year. But then if they have excess losses, they'll continue to carry it over to the following year, and then but that excess carry forward shall not exceed $10 million.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, the intent here will be when we go into exec session later, we have these four.
Except
And
we've only
we'll-
got three.
We can get copies of 2290. All right. Thank you.
I think
Right.
we'd like to see 2290 before we break for a caucus.
Okay. Let me.
if we could.
Get, how many copies? 20 copies of that. Okay, I'm going to close the work session on HB 415. Everything here. Representative Almy, you have a question?
Yeah, the next one, maybe I should, well, maybe I should wait until you've opened this, but
If that's what you're going to talk about, yes.
yeah.
Okay. We'll now open the work session on HB 494. Representative Almy.
Thank you. Representative Bixby is on a 3-day trip at this point, business trip. And we have been working, he has been working especially with the Agriculture Department. I think we have someone here. Yes, you. And there, have you got the latest version of the amendment, which is yesterday's? Okay, so I would like to go into the audience and also talk
What,
about this, but the situation is that we have an amendment which he sent in draft form, but it was a little too drafty, to OLS and asked them to get it out by yesterday, and they did, and he looked at it as he was leaving and rewrote it, fortunately just before he left, and sent it back to them to redraft. And I have what he sent, which I read, and it looks pretty much like what we all had agreed to do. We discussed this also in dedicated funds yesterday. The chair and I are both on that committee. There's a certain amount of mess involved in this part of the departmental structure, and this cleans it up better than if we tried to do it through dedicated funds. And it is the same subject that for everybody else. The problem is that Representative Bixby was interested in having more fertilizer and liming and other testing done because there's almost nothing. So the consumers, both of nurseries and for agricultural purposes, have no guarantee that the products being sold in this state are what they say they are, which is a kind of a central function of the Department of Agriculture. And so he put in a bill that creates a new dedicated fund just to do that. The trouble is there is another dedicated fund with too much money in it at the moment, which does that, which is supposed to do that, and which in the compendium of dedicated funds, the department states that we all think that we ought to be doing a lot more with fertilizer and liming and that kind of stuff, testing. So we've been working to replace the bill with making sure that that is actually done inside of the dedicated fund. It's supposed to be done in, and revising that dedicated fund so that it is titled what it is doing. So that's what this is. I would like to be able to pull it out, and maybe you can talk while I'm doing that.
Director, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Alan Wyman with the Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food. I am the Division Director of Regulatory Services and responsible for the oversight of these programs we're discussing here associated with this bill. I think Representative Almy stated it fairly clearly. It's not much more I can add other than to say that some of these rules and the regulations and rules predate 1985. Over time, things have gotten somewhat squirrely. As a director, I'm trying to figure out, what I'm trying to make sure the money can be tracked as it should be, and this helps to clean up everything. The purpose of closing these dedicated funds, putting it in a separate dedicated fund is really for simplicity and tracking, better use of the fund, actually better use of the funds for the purpose for which they are being gathered. So
does this proposed amendment create a new dedicated fund?
no, what we're trying to do here is put it into a pre-existing dedicated fund, but that pre-existing dedicated fund has a name that doesn't really match the purpose of the fund. I don't know how that long ago that happened or why, but it's time to clean it up and make sure that the funding is going into the correct dedicated fund with the correct name for the correct purposes. I mean, it's all working that way now, but it's so scattered that it's not clear. This clarifies everything, I think.
Questions? Roseanne Platt.
I don't see the name of the old fund, so it's clear that the new name is replacing the old fund's name.
That is correct.
How do I know that it's not creating another fund? Because it's intended to replace the old fund with a different name.
So this is going to it's going to what we currently call the scale testing fund. The scale testing fund has nothing to do with scale testing. It has to do with product registration, which is what this money is for. The purpose of the money gathered that's being moved to the scale testing fund is for product registration, inspection, sampling. So in the process of trying to clean things up, we also thought it made sense to correct, and there's another bill that will correct or I say correct, but change the scale testing fund to product registration. So that's more reflective of what is actually those funds are being used for.
Follow up?
Yes. 43520, I should look it up now, but that refers to a scale testing fund. So for the amend 43520, it now says agricultural products regulatory fund. It will be clear that the new name is the same fund with a different name.
I hope so. That's the point, and that's the purpose. Through the legislative process, and however this manages to flow through that process, at the end of the day, we're going to have one fund, product registration fund, used to be called the scale testing fund, and this money is going there. This should not be creating any additional funds. It should be cleaning up currently existing funds. I don't, relative to the legislative process and how those name changes occur, I don't understand that.
What is
To do why? That's why I asked the question.
what is preventing us from? I think Representative Almy mentioned that the current fund is supposed to do product testing. What is stopping us from doing product testing?
So I came into the division approximately 2 years ago now. When I got in, I noted, as I think everybody already understood, that a lot of this testing hadn't been done for quite some time. And from my perspective, looking in, being fairly new to this position, what I saw was an extraordinarily amount of time being taken up in two aspects. The organic program takes a significant amount of staff time. I don't think years ago that was the case, but the program has exploded. And feed and fertilizer registrations, where I have two people who sit for months inputting information into a database, which they should be out there doing sampling and inspections. So simultaneous to this, we also have talks going on to buttress off the animal industries database to try to create a database in which those two people could spend significantly less time at a desk inputting information and going out and doing sampling and so forth. So we're trying to process things in a way that creates significantly greater efficiencies in the division using taxpayers' dollars, you know? And I just don't, from my perspective coming in from the private sector, these were inefficiencies I saw immediately that probably have been in place for, well, they've been in place for decades. So it's sort of like, let's clean things up, let's get things efficient, let's bring budgets into accounts where they truly belong, call them what they truly do, and that just makes life easier, certainly for me, and it allows us to focus our personnel where they belong.
Representative Almy? Yes.
Repeat, because nobody can hear you.
Thank you. I promised Representative Bixby that I'd speak about the bill. This is the way he did it. He did not take the time that the drafter is taking now to modify the existing language. He just removed the words product testing and product and scale testing. It has a variety of names of that sort throughout. The purposes of the fund are not explained except by the title in the RSAs right now. But it is within the agricultural part of the RSAs, and it was always meant to be dealing with testing of agricultural products, which includes the livestock in agriculture. And that is why part of the money is coming from dog licenses, because they are also supposed to be testing dog food products. And I think that's also not going on. Correct. And the scale part of it, nobody can figure out, as he said, but where that came from, but it hasn't been done in the memory of anybody that's in agriculture at this point. So what the existing language says on which will be modified, I think that 431.27 and A6 are now coming into that fund. And the other two, 431.4 and 6, are pretty small, about $300,000 a year, I think, that will be added into it to help pay for the fertilizer. The other problem with this fund is that it has over a end of year balance of over $1 million that is always there, and their revenues and their expenses pretty much equal each other. But that is before they do the fertilizer testing. And a lot of what it's doing is paying for the 20th century data, early 20th century data collection and registration rather than computerization. They are now trying to spread computerization of all of their registration around the department into databases, but they've been starting with the animal products one that the commissioner got through last year, which is just starting to be built. So we're in the early stages of coming into the 21st century in the agriculture department. So it also says which shall be credited to the agricultural and scale testing. I can't remember exactly what horticultural and scale testing. I don't know where the horticultural part came from, but except that it's part of agriculture. And it will be credited to the agriculture and scale testing fund, and the drafter will X that out and put in bold the agricultural products regulatory fund, which after a fair amount of discussion inside of the department, they decided was the best way to call this, because it's what they really meant it to be doing, or what they think they've really meant it to be doing for quite some time now. So that goes throughout here, and most of this is just on renaming this fund, on getting it straight in the 612 section, which is the dedicated funds, and adding those two small, and adding purpose, which is on the back there, the purpose of the fund, in the second to last paragraph, is the first time that the purpose of the fund is being put into the law, which would be very helpful, I think, for the future. And when he says, including the inspection, sampling, and testing of commercial feed, parenthesis 43519, that's going to come back from the drafter as something like RSA 43519. And most of the rest of it is changing the name of it and establishing the linkage with 612. But it does what Representative Bixby and the Agriculture Committee, which passed this over to us, wanted to do in that fund, is to return it to the purpose that they thought it had for quite some time, and start the process of creating the databases that they need in this area, as well as a few other areas, I think, under your section, so that the agriculture staff can do what they were supposed to be doing, which is out in the field
Okay, now,
and
excuse
in
me.
manufacturing plants.
So yesterday, we learned that, was it 250,000 that was in the budget for the database?
Well-
Does that not free up people, Director?
Do you want me to do that? Do you think that's more legislative or?
Well, I could tell you that the 250,000 is more specific to, I think, the animal industries database and in their division. We have also the weights and measures, which is in desperate need, more probably than anybody. My division also needs a database structure, and Pierre's group, Plant Industries as well. We're still working with pesticides to figure out what their needs are, but that 250 is for specific to the standing up a database for animal industry.
Okay, so this, I'll get to you in a minute. The original bill created a new dedicated fund, correct? So now this amendment, which is it a replace all?
Replaces the
Replace
entire.
all. So now we're no longer creating a new dedicated fund. We are redefining, changing the title of the current dedicated fund, and also being specific on what the dedicated fund is doing. Okay, Representative Platt.
Will we get the amendment in time to handle this today?
I have Karen trying to work on that, but I think he probably sent it to him about the same time he sent this to me, which was around 5 o'clock yesterday, so I'm not sure. whether we could do it today or not. But the other thing is, I think this needs a public hearing. So it would have to be done with the next meeting whenever we're going to be able to do that, which I think is also a problem. But we have until the 17th of November for these, except that the chair's leaving for a while.
Director Allen, I guess if this was not passed, what is the immediate ramification?
Because we have right now, if these funds are transferred over to what will be called the product regulatory, we'll have equity between input and output, the fees coming in and the costs going out. We have so theoretically it would be problematic into the next budgetary cycle, but we have a buffer here in this budget that we're hoping to put towards the IT upgrades. So I don't know which are in process and are going to take time. So if it doesn't pass this cycle, is it going to be a huge deal? I don't think so. But that's the situation we're in. We're equity right now between what's coming in, what's coming out. We have a bit of a buffer. We're hoping that buffer can be used towards the IT upgrades, freeing up staff to do what they're supposed to be doing.
What is your buffer right now? It was 1.7 million, was it?
1.5, give or take. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that 250,000 is coming out of, and I'm not. Yeah, it's coming out of that. So it's going to be probably less than 1.5, somewhere 1.45, something of that nature. Once the 250 comes out.
Okay. Representative Almy.
If I could answer that only, I think that the major implication would be that for another 2 years, we're not going to, they won't be testing fertilizer, dog food, on all the other animal food products as well. And they will be mostly sitting at their desks inputting data when they could be starting to move out into the field and acting like a Department of Agriculture.
Representative Ames.
I just wanted to say, first, that it looks like some hard work has been done here, and it's just straightening things out. Basically, that's what we're talking about. And if it takes a public hearing, I guess because it's non-germane, is that the idea? So be it. We've got where are we? We're mid-October now. We've got till mid-November. We should be able to manage that and get the job done.
Representative Ors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, thanks for taking my question. Would you be able to move a clerical position into inputting in the database and let these people get out to the field? I figure they're certified or they're trained to do the testing that a data clerk maybe wouldn't do.
That's a great question. So we do have a data clerk, and when this program started, my only guess is, because I wasn't around when it was started, but from the information I see in the data I've witnessed historically, this program has exploded. So now it's taking our data clerk and our inspector to do that work. It's a lot under the division, just things have exploded.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, Representative Leapley.
Thank you. I just want to thank the director for all of the work that I think it would be very daunting to walk into a job and be like, oh, this hasn't been updated for 30 years. So I just want to say thank you. I think that our citizens expect that the state is doing this work, and I want to thank you for bringing to our attention that it's not. And sounds like funds are appropriated. Just bureaucracy and time has gotten in the way. So I really appreciate you bringing this to us. And I hope that we won't slow this down, but speed it up and get this work done, because I know for me, if we bring this back in a year, I'm going to be like, what? And so I know for myself, I would have to redo a lot of the mental work to understand. So I hope that we can get this done and serve the people in the way that we're supposed to. So thank you so much for all of the extra work to call attention to this and bring it forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We need somebody to get Jordan. Need Jordan.
Who's Jordan?
306. 306. I'll close the public hearing on HB 494. Not the public hearing. We'll close the work session on HB 494. That's what you wanted. Just had, unfortunately, the only copy I had was my notes on it. So. We're just going to wait a minute to get Representative Jordan down here. He's up in another committee meeting. Oh, I said Jordan. Yeah, Representative Ellery. All right, I'm going to open the work session on SB 112. And Senator Lang, you have a proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm passing around an amendment that I drafted, although it's a Senate amendment. If you guys choose to go forward with it, you'd have to have it redrafted as a House amendment to adopt it. The amendment goes back to our favorite conversation point of historic horse racing and moratoriums. So I've been working with various individuals and entities to try to get to a place where we can all come to an agreement, whether that be in the executive branch as well as the Senate and as well as the House.
Representative wanted to have everyone receive.
Sure, I'll wait.
That's you, Liz. Okay.
All right, so it's ice again. So the bill before you, again, I worked with the lottery, the governor's office, as well as members of my own committee in the Senate to get to a point where there would be something that we could potentially move forward that would get a signature at the end of the day, and we'd be able to move forward with a moratorium. As you remember, the governor's veto message was a conversation around free market and the fact that there has to be some free market growth in the industry. That was a significant portion of his veto message to the legislature. What this bill does is it allows for some incremental growth. What the amendment does, it allows for some incremental growth. So if a gaming operator employer who put an application in between January 1 and October 15th, and the October 15th date is because I didn't want to rush to lottery for a gaming operation, so I made sure it was a date before this committee was going to act and before the amendment was made public, so that there wasn't a rush on lottery for applications. But I think we've all recognized that historic horse racing has had an impact in New Hampshire on our charitable gaming operations. And what this bill will do is allow for some incremental growth. So anybody who invested money and put in for a gaming operator's license in the anticipation of the 2024 expiration date was going to happen, it would allow them to be able to continue to move forward if they've filed an application with lottery between January 1st of this year and October 15th of this year. Those people had a reasonable expectation to think that they would be eligible for a historic horse racing license July 1 as of this year of 24. So what I've done is I've allowed for some incremental growth. You can, I think Director McIntyre's in the room. You can talk to him how many applicants there are. I have no idea. I just wanted to allow for some incremental growth to occur. And the second thing this amendment does is it extends the moratorium out for 4 years. As you all know, we have a gaming commission that's meeting that doesn't have a report due to the end of next year. This would allow time for that commission to do its work to see what the impact of historic horse racing is on the industry and whether or not it should be adjusted, and then gives time for the legislative process that needs to occur after that report's been filed, so the legislature can consume that report and figure out what bills, because it's due in December, it's past all the filing deadlines. So we'd have to wait a whole nother 9 months before you potentially would see a bill after the committee report. And hence the reason why I pushed the moratorium out 4 years to give all of that process time allowed to happen. Again, this was done in cooperation with the governor's office, my committee and Ways and Means in the Senate, and the Lottery Commission. I'm proposing it to the House as a reasonable compromise to be able to put some constraints on HHR until we have a report, but also allow some incremental growth in the industry in light of the governor's free market argument. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Representative Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. You've referenced twice working with the governor's office. Are you telling me that the governor's office wants this piece of legislation? I'm kind of confused as to the message there.
Again, with the incremental growth, is my understanding that it would receive a signature.
Could you repeat that?
Sure, with the incremental growth, my understanding, will get the signature. It alleviates the governor's original response to the legislature about the free market, allows the free market to continue without opening the doors forever until we have that report from the Gaming Commission.
Follow up.
Follow up?
So I remember you testifying in front of this committee about SB 51 and how you work with the governor's office, and that was going to get a signature. How can we be assured that this is going to get a
Sure.
signature?
I was as surprised as you were, Representative.
I don't want to be surprised again.
Okay, now, again, I can only tell you that I worked with the lottery office and the governor's office to try to find a compromise to be able to move something forward, because I in addition to you, agree that a rampant expansion of HHR could potentially cause a problem, but I'm a guy who works on data. We don't have any data. We have feelings right now, and I don't work a lot on feelings. We think it's gonna, we know, but we don't know. The whole point of the commission is to get to we know. And so this bill will allow an expansion of the moratorium until we can get to a we know. And when we know, we can then act on legislation. But until then, again, I feel it might, and I'd rather have facts and data, which is exactly what the commission is supposed to do. So we extend the moratorium with some incremental growth until we can get that data from the commission, and then we can act on proper legislation further.
Representative Platt.
I may be showing my ignorance here, but what does historic horse racing got to do with charitable gaming?
Sure, thank you. So historic horse racing is a allowed component of charitable gaming in our charitable gaming facilities. It has a revenue split, just like table games do with charities and everybody else. So a certain portion of all the revenue that comes in is distributed between the state, charities, and the operator.
Representative Ames.
Yeah, I basically have two questions. I'll merge them. The first is what you think about the question of germaneness and the need for having a hearing on this amendment. It's consistent with our discussion of a bill we just were talking about. It's, that was maybe arguable. This may be a little less arguable in terms of it's a subject that was a part of the large issue of these gambling undertakings, that it was definitely not in 112, the moratorium, as I recall.
So my understanding is 112 was Senator Ricciardi's bill, did
Yes.
have the moratorium in it. This is just a different implementation of that section of that bill.
Okay, I missed that. We can go back to that.
Yeah,
Let's
my
just-
understanding is it
If
was
that's
in
the
that.
case, no problem. If it's not the case, then it's not a real problem. We can have a hearing. And the second thing is I strongly support the need for an extension of the moratorium. And I thank you for pushing that too. And the idea of folding in, trying to be fair, so that the enterprises that have worked to start a process and have invested money would not be cut out by this moratorium. I think that's the idea. But 4 years seems like a lot of time. And to me, it's more time than is needed. I'd be comfortable with 2 years, and maybe you could talk about the why 4 and not 2, because maybe there's a good reason. I'm completely open, but my bias is not to make it too long, because this is essentially enabling monopolies to develop and to capture the ground, so to speak, before anybody else can get in.
Thank you for your question. So again, I obviously accept 2 years. My thought was along the legislative process. Again, the committee report from the Charitable Gaming Commission isn't due out until December of 24. Filing date's gone, right? So that means 25 is a dead year. You wouldn't be able to pass any legislation in 25, which means the first time you'd have the opportunity to submit legislation September of 25 to be heard in 26. And by that time, the moratorium would end within 6 months if we didn't take action. So my plan was, the idea was to give it a little longer time for the legislative process to occur, given the dates of the commission report, our filing periods and all of that. While I wouldn't oppose the 2-year, again, that was the Senate position originally when we brought the bill forward and that was passed originally. I just, in looking back at the legislative process, I realized that we have no time to file a bill in 25. So that was all.
If I may,
Yes, follow up.
just responding to that, it seems to me the commission, you and I are both on this commission and we'll work hard and we could get the job done in October. And if a bill was needed, and I expect there will be a bill that's needed, I think we'll all want to have it processed, worked on in the following calendar year, which means getting it in within the deadline, whatever the deadline is. I don't know in the second year what the deadline usually is for filing bills. It's a little later than it is this year.
Right, again, so we'd be in the first year of a new election cycle, right? The November of 24 is going to have the election cycle. Means you'd have a window in November for filing bills, but then it's gone when you're elected, right? You have a window of time, and the committee report's not due out till December 1st, which is past filing deadlines. And so that potentially you could do a late bill filing, but then that's up to the subject of somebody else. So that was my concern, was strictly bill filing periods running through the election cycle and when you're allowed to file bills. So again, if you want to modify it down to 3 years, right, to give that whole session, whole term, next term, the 24 and 25, or 26 and 27 term, I'd be fine with that as well.
Representative Schamberg, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. Along the same lines that Representative Ames brought up, that if moratorium is mentioned in here, then there's no need for a public hearing per se. But wasn't Senate Bill 112, wasn't it dealing with breakage and those items? And that's would be non-germane with this particular bill here?
Again, I think it had lots of components to it. There were lots of stuff that was in there, including breakage, which was part of it. My understanding is, if I remember right, 112 did include a moratorium provision. If it did, then it leaves moratorium as I may be wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right. And that's why 112 was suggested as the vehicle to be able to move this moratorium piece forward.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. Just first, I don't see the moratorium in the bill, but I haven't read every word right now. I wanted to ask, what is really moving towards a monopolized situation right now is that the Lottery Commission, despite something that was in the original bill that said that once a owner has a license, it cannot be transferred, has found a way that it is transferred. My not yet built casino is part of a 4-group casino that was put together by Diagnosed in Manchester. He has now sold it to somebody else, and who is in the business nationally. And this seems to be going on a fair amount, that these licenses are being transferred in a way that not being in that area of law, I don't really understand. But this seems to me to be a more immediate concern than new people get as part of getting into the business.
What specifically?
So again, I don't necessarily disagree with you, Representative Almy, at all. However, I had a conversation with Representative Ames, and I think the problem is that I originally had language to put in here about ownership and 50% ownership and transfer of licensors and that kind of thing. However, it would be non-germane at that point, because now we're talking about the overall issue of a gaming license, where this is talking specifically about historic horse racing. So I think it would have been non-germane. So I think you'll be hearing about that in the upcoming session, if I'm not mistaken.
Representative Doucette, did you have a question?
Yeah, my recollection of SB 112, it does have the breakage language, and I have a proposed amendment that I'm reading through that I submitted to OLS that doesn't address it. I believe lottery, and we can ask them, had an issue with a specific component relative to the language, breakage in relation to HHR, and that needed some kind of housekeeping cleanup there. So I don't know if Attorney Formella can answer that, but I believe that's the connection. It should be in my amendment, and it's not also. So,
Okay. Yeah, that's a question. Yeah.
wrong attorney. My apologies. Legal counsel for the lottery, I'm sorry.
Okay. Is legal counsel here for the lottery?
You all set with me?
The question is, we're trying to figure out if this is.
In SB 112, it's my understanding there was some confusion with the breakage language in relation to HHR. Can you clear that up for us? Because I thought I had submitted in my proposal to OLS for my amendment. It doesn't seem to be in Senator Lang's either. And there was something he wanted cleaned up there, and that's where the link with these amendments come from. Okay, I'll dig it up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Leapley.
Like Representative Platt, I'm afraid that my question may reveal my ignorance. But it's kind of along the same lines. So there's been a lot of articles in the newspaper lately about charitable gaming and how it works and how much money is being generated. And I had this number in my head about 24%, right? Charitable gaming generated 24% more gross, I think just gross, over the last year. So this is really a big, big, big number that we're talking about. And I was talking to a constituent and she was like, and this may be mixing two things together. And that's part of why I'm asking the question. So you can separate them out, because I'm sure constituents are watching at home and we're talking about breakage and it's all getting very detailed, right? But she said, I don't understand. We have the Lottery Commission. It's supposed to be funding our schools. You know, more and more people are gambling every year. Where is all the money that's supposed to be, funding our schools? And I'm looking at this newspaper article that talks about the 24% increase in charitable gaming. And it says, donations to charitable gaming, to charitable organizations are made on a, rotating cycle. It's trying to explain. Throughout the period, 35% of the gross revenues from games of chance will be donated to charitable organizations. And then in the next line, it says, in historical horse racing, when players use the machines to place bets, the gaming facilities keep 12% of the money it makes after giving out prizes. While it may appear that casinos are donating more to charities, only 3% of gross revenues is split between charities and the New Hampshire Lottery Commission. So it does seem to go to Representative Plett's question of what does historic horse racing have to do with charitable gaming? And if I understand the article correctly, it's very different how much money is going to where. According to this article, 3% is split between the charities and the fund. Can you walk me through and help me
can.
answer my constituent's question?
I can, and I think Director McIntyre behind me will also do a good job at answering this question. But so understand the games of chance, table games, blackjack, poker, those kind of things. There's a thing called GGR, which is gross gaming revenue. Gross gaming revenue is the amount of money left over after we've paid all the players their winnings, right? And that's basically your profit, right? For lack of a better phrase, that's your profit line. In games of chance, that's split up with the charity getting 35%. in table games. So poker, blackjack, when you play that, charity gets a larger percentage. In historic horse racing, the operators take 12% off the top of the handle, the total amount raised. That 12% is then split up between the state, the charity, and the gaming operator, with the state and charity taking 25% and the gaming operator taking 75%. But Charlie will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. Yes? He's shaking his head. Yes, yeah, I'm right. So to answer your question, historic racing gets a lesser percentage than table games. We've already exceeded our revenue projections for HHR more than we ever thought we were going to get. So charities will be seeing money from that, which is a new revenue stream, for lack of a better phrase, for the charities, because we didn't have HHR before. But the question is, and the question the committee is going to struggle with, the Gaming Commission is the increased revenue that's being done on HHR, is that having an impact on table games where the charities get a significantly higher portion? And we don't know the answer to that yet. That's the whole point of the commission, is to dig into that and understand, are we cannibalizing and giving charities less money because we've implemented the new gaming structure? I don't know the answer to that. That's the reason why we have the commission, is I don't know whether or not HHR is cannibalizing table games, which is going to result in less revenues for charities. We won't know that until we get some data, and we don't have that yet.
Can I have a follow-up?
Follow up?
So the HHR is not, there's no rent, for example. You're just getting, that 3% is just getting divided.
I don't know where you're getting the 3% from. Again, it's 12%.
this-
Well, so yeah, it's 75%, 25%, which is split between the state and the charity, would be 3% of 12%. So yes, I understand where you got the 3% number now. So yes, I don't believe there's rent. Again, I think Charlie might be able to answer that question, but I don't believe there's rent on HHR. There is rent on table games,
So
on
that
games of chance.
35% that goes to the
The charity.
charities, some of that is taken up in rent.
Correct.
So they pay part of that money back to the casino owner in rent.
Correct.
So it could be 20%, it could be 15%, it could be 5% that the charity walks away with.
So it's a fixed number. Again, we talked about this in the Gaming Commission. It is, if you remember the bill we passed that established the Gaming Commission, there were 5 charges of the commission, and one of them was to talk about rent.
Okay.
So specifically to look at the rent issue is pulling back money from charities after you've done the money, and whether or not that's a reasonable practice or not.
Okay.
So that is an explicit charge within the Charitable Gaming Commission to look at.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for taking my question. So if it's only 12% and they're splitting it 75-25, why don't we change the numbers so if it is pirating from the other games of chance, that the charities won't be taking a big loss? Can this be done?
Well, again, that is one of the charges of this commission, is to look at the split, if you will, what that looks like and how that works. So again, we don't have data yet, right? But we haven't, there's only 7 locations that have been active in historic horse racing, and even of some of those, they've been active less than a year, right? So we still have to collect data to try to see what that looks like. So there may be a split change, there may not be. We don't know because we haven't seen the data yet. The whole point of this is not to let the thing explode before we've got the data and can see what the impact was. And so hence the reason for a request for a moratorium.
Okay, follow up. So do we have even a small amount of data that we could possibly collect, like 6 months or whatever, and get an idea maybe what's happening? Or
Well, again, that's the goal of the commission, right? We'll have a full year's worth of data that we should be able to look at. But again, we're working a little bit in the blind because the annual reports, when they're done and what it looks like. Again, Director McIntyre could probably answer a lot of these questions, but we have some data, but we don't have a full impact because we're still in the ramp up phase, right?
Sure.
We're still ramping up. So the numbers, it's hard to look at the numbers when you have a October number that's low and a November number that's high because 2 more places went online, right?
Got it.
And we don't know what the charity split will look like long term. And so again, the whole point of the commission and giving it an extended commission to the end of next year was to be able to collect that data as it's happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to join my colleagues, Representative Platt and Representative Leapley, in feeling as though I'm putting my ignorance on display. This seems to be the day for it. I am sometimes, although sometimes I feel as though I'm getting a better handle on the charitable gaming piece of the gaming stuff. Most times I feel like the more I hear, the less I understand. I would like to request, not today, not to do this today, but to get a presentation about how all of this works. That would include how decisions get made about which charities are selected. I don't understand that there is any consistent process. How much the charities have received over time. It would help me to get an idea of what we are actually looking at. And I have to reiterate, I am more confused today than I was yesterday. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So there was a presentation done to the Gaming Commission this week, and I can get that presentation. It has the breakdown of financials and a basic understanding of all gaming in New Hampshire, whether it's lottery, Lucky 7, bingo. It has a breakdown of that. And the director's also going to get us a primer, a basic primer on language and what it means when you're talking about charitable. What does a handle mean? What does GGR mean? What do these phrases mean? And I'm sure we can share that with the Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also really like to understand how charities are chosen. The last I understood, and again, I don't know if this is accurate or not, is that each casino gets requests from charities in the area, and they choose which charities they are going to give their funds to. If this money is in effect money that is taken away, is segregated from money that could potentially be going to education and to the business owners, I think it makes sense for us to take a look at whether that's the best way to do that, and to try to make sure that there aren't, say, favored charities of a particular casino owner, and that charity consistently gets funds and others don't.
So again, Mr. Chair, I'll remind you, that is a significant issue, and it's why it's one of the 5 charges. Again, rent being one of them, how charities are selected as a second charge in that commission, that we're looking at how that happens and whether that should be regulated. So you're not alone in your concerns about how charities are picked, and I will tell you that it is part of the commission's responsibility is to look at that and make recommendations.
Any other questions? I think at this time, we are going to need, we already talked about the possible need of a public hearing. I know Representative Doucette has a amendment that may need a public hearing as well. So what I would say is hold questions regarding this, because during that, we're going to have a public hearing. And I would also ask Lottery, once we know what that date is, to come in and answer some of these additional questions, so we can move on at this time.
Before we move on, will Lottery be speaking today on this particular amendment? If not, I do have some questions for Lottery, if they wouldn't mind coming up. Just real quick.
I was going to suggest this is not an amendment that's been submitted by any of the members of this committee. I have one that will be, and I suspect Lottery will speak to it, and it's suspiciously similar in text with some changes, so I think it would cover what you're getting at there, Representative.
Mr. Chair, my questions have to deal with particular questions about who is involved, how many, and where these people that have put applications in are located. I thought maybe the director could answer that. I don't know if that would.
Well, that sounds like it may also be similar to Representative Elberger's question about who are the charities, how are they chosen?
It's not the charities. I'm sorry. It's the applicants that want to do this. file for license, new licenses.
All right, so, okay, Director, could you come forward and answer that question about new applicants?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Charlie McIntyre, Lottery Director, and with me is our Chief Compliance Officer, John Conforti. That was actually several questions, Representative Schamberg. So which one?
Let me just, if I may, just repeat them.
Sure.
How many applicants are in the queue right now between
Current,
January 1st and October 15th?
currently, there will be 4.
4. Second question, do you have a public list of who they are?
No. Under the terms of the HHR law as passed and signed into law, applications are confidential. So I'm not
Okay.
allowed to discuss it.
Okay. And well, third question, since you can't give their names, can you identify where they are located, these individuals that have applied, what state they may be from or anything like that?
I cannot. All the terms of the application are considered confidential, so I can't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, Representative Doucette, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to belabor any further, you'll note that some of the language here is relatively the same, and I'll wait for the amendment to go around as the piece you just got. And if I might add, Mr. Chair, while people are getting the amendment, the members are getting the amendment, we're talking about a singular game here, HHR. These charitable gaming houses have numerous games, blackjack, roulette, poker, Spanish 21. We could go on with different choices. We're talking about a very specific game, an electronic game that this legislature went back and forth over about 6 years, okay? And I was a proponent, a great proponent, and still remain a great proponent for this, because what it did, in fact, was these charitable gaming facilities that host the ability to have HHR in their facilities serve 2 charities a day instead of 1. At the end of the day, that's what this is about. It's about charitable gaming. So, to me at least, the argument about free market, and I'm a free market guy, this does not negate anybody's ability to apply with lottery for a charitable gaming license and be approved and open a facility with local approval and open a charitable gaming license. And I guess I'd ask Director McIntyre back, because I do have a direct question in relation to this. What we did as a legislature in bringing forward HHR was to offer that added component. And obviously, the revenues are reflective of that component right now. And I would venture to say that we have just scratched the surface as to the impact of this one particular game in these gaming halls. And I guess my question for the director is, prior to the approval and the signing into law of HHR, how many charitable gaming license had you received, let's just say, in the prior 5 years?
Good morning, Representative Doucette.
And thank you for taking my question. I'm sorry.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to have our Chief Compliance Officer answer.
So Representative Doucette, this would be an estimate, but I would say over the past 5 years, we probably have received in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 applications
Prior to the HHR?
prior to HHR.
Okay. And subsequent to and that's over how many, 5 years?
Over a 5 year
Okay, so
period.
roughly 8.
I would say 8 to 10.
8 to
Again,
10?
that
Okay.
would be an estimate. There's
Okay.
probably some leeway in there.
Okay. And since January 1, with the advent and the ability for people to apply for HHR licenses coupled with charitable gaming, is there a way to break that out? Or let me step back here. How many charitable gaming license applications have you received at Lottery since January 1?
since January 1 for games of chance. As Director McIntyre said, we currently have 4.
Okay, 4 cents in the last few months, less than a year.
In the last year or so, yes.
Okay. And if I could ask another question, how many of the operators that held charitable gaming licenses prior to HHR have changed hands?
If I could, technically there was no changing of hands. The corporation which was licensed previously is still the licensed corporation. The shares of that corporation were sold. So essentially the same licensee exists. It's just the shares are held by different owners.
Okay, so none have changed hands.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was an opinion by the Attorney General's office,
Okay,
not
thank
us.
you for that. So what I'm getting at with this amendment, this covers a lot of house keeping issues, unruly patrons and such. But to the crux of this, again, we're at the moratorium, and I restate, we're talking about one component, one game, HHR. Charitable gaming, I'm also a member of the Gaming Commission, but I'm also a member of this legislature, and a commission does not negate us legislating what we need to legislate to deliver for our constituency. It's not the first time you've heard me say, and I have broad shoulders. I was a very big proponent for HHR, but even I wouldn't have expected to see what we've seen in the growth of these particular games. I live in the town of Salem. Anybody that lives on a border town, Nashua, Seabrook, Salem, and the like, can understand the interest for some outside interests to come in and start charitable gaming halls, because that's the model we have here in New Hampshire. And by the way, within the borders of New Hampshire, I think we have 14 charitable gaming facilities, if I'm correct, operating.
That is correct.
Okay, at present, we have 14, 4 in the queue with applications with lottery. That's the possibility of some 18, which is far in excess of anything in the totality of New England. So to say that a moratorium on a singular game is negative to the free market, I don't agree with that argument, quite frankly. And if we look at it this way, I sat on the Gaming Commission on Tuesday, and I heard the Dean of the Senate, Senator Lou D'Alessandro, speak about how much of the airwaves, and especially the news media coverage of simply DraftKings, is taking on. And I don't know in case you noticed, but there are many vendors for sports gaming, but for some reason we have one vendor in the state of New Hampshire. That's a monopoly, okay? This isn't about monopolies. This isn't about negating the ability of anybody to take on the ability to open a charitable gaming hall and to help those communities that would welcome charitable gaming and reap the benefits from the revenue for the charities. So in this, I offer up the ability, and I had this drafted well before, and if you look on line 19, I put a drop dead date of September 1, and with conversations with lottery, it's come to my attention that a more appropriate date would be October 18th, which was yesterday, so it would cover the 4 applicants at present that are in the queue. But it would be my position, and I understand the position of others on this committee, and that 2 years or 4 years maybe. I think, the days of kicking the can down the road on issues we need to address up front and full bore are here. So I'm a little animated about this because I bear some of the responsibility of getting this passed. And I don't want the state of New Hampshire to turn into the state of New Jersey. And I don't want Salem, New Hampshire to become Atlantic City. Okay? Also, if you note in the last section of my amendment, it eliminates the rent component. Hard stop. No rent. It should have been gone a long time ago. So I know that we should and we will, in discussions with the clerk, we're going to have a work session on this and we can talk at this at length, but I think my position is very clear to see on this. And I look forward to having those discussions, so thank you.
Thank you. Representative Elberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make clear, I want to clarify what I think I heard, because if I got it right, it makes no sense to me. In Nashua, we currently have 2 small casinos that were owned by a Nashua resident who, as I understood it, sold the license to an out-of-state group that is going to be closing those 2 casinos and moving them into the old Sears building in the Pheasant Lane Mall, which is not just a border city. I mean, the parking lot is in Massachusetts and the building is in New Hampshire. I think what you said was that that license wasn't really sold. I'm trying to get my head around this one too.
I can only suggest to you that gaming, can I move this?
Yes, please. Thank you.
I can only suggest to you that gaming operators are amongst the single most talented people at finding loopholes. I would point you to Missouri, where there are only riverboats, and the law allows you to be over water. So as long as you're over water at some point, it's a riverboat, even though you go down 12 levels and there's a puddle in the basement. The license was not sold. The shares of the company were sold, and with that went the assets of the company, and that included the ability to apply for and receive a license for HHR. This was, as was explained to us, the Attorney General's office opined on this and approved it. It was not our idea.
Thank you. My hair, which is already thin, feels like it's getting split even farther.
Representative Boger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In looking at the Amendment 2336H, down on line 28, it's talking about, and it seems like the committee here their intent was to have a non-transferable license, and it sounds like one of the loopholes is the sale of a majority shares in these company, which then allows another one. And my question does, if a hedge fund or a larger corporation buys it as a subsidiary company, would they still remain as a licensee while a larger corporation would control the subsidiary? Thank you.
The answer is yes.
Follow up. So would it be advisable under those 28, if the intent of the committee is to restrain the transfer of these licenses, to maybe add a little more in-depth verbiage to that to control it? Or do these loopholes, or do you want to continue with the loopholes? That's up to the committee. Thank you.
Do you have an opinion on that thought?
I'm sorry, I was just confirming my colleague. Go ahead.
I can address that. So as Director McIntyre said, it was our initial assessment that the licenses were not transferable at all. And ultimately, the Attorney General's office opined that the transfer of interests in the entity would be permissible under the statute as written. There is language in the horse racing statute, which talks about the transfer of 50% or more, which is more specific. And my understanding from the Attorney General's office is that if that language had been imported into the historic horse racing bill, that it would have placed more restrictions on the on that loophole that Director McIntyre had identified.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, that would cover the stock purchase portion of it, but what happens if they're bought as a subsidiary of a larger corporation? Has that been addressed
that has not been addressed specifically. I would have to take a look at the specific language or the specific transaction. I do want to make one clarification too. We still review suitability on any ownership transfers, even if it's within, if it's the permissible transfer that you're talking about, we would still review the individuals or corporations that are purchasing that. But with respect to your specific question, I would have to get an opinion from the Attorney General's office on that.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. What is do we have any ability to go back, fix the language, and require that no owner or including of the shares is allowed to own more than one casino?
It would be difficult to opine on the legality of it. I would think on a going forward basis, certainly that would be permissible. As retroactively, I think that would be difficult to do.
And also, I certainly, when I was in Massachusetts, one of our sister agencies where I worked was the Liquor Commission. And there was a law that said you could only own 3 liquor stores, and those with large families owned more. So I would suggest that they,
Because we're on track to have completely uncontrollable by anybody in this state, single or double owners of all of the casino gambling in this state. But I did want to suggest, if we're going to have a public hearing, maybe we ought to suspend conversation at this point and move to the next bill.
As soon as you finish, that's exactly what I was going to say, because we're going.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, obviously you were
Yes.
a member of the commission as well, the study
Yes.
commission. And if I could, I would happily provide the same presentation we gave this week to the members of the commission, as well as updated numbers in terms of revenue and the like. And also the same information we're going to provide to the commission, as Senator Lang said, we would provide as well in advance, so that they would have areas to question us on specifically versus.
Right. That's a good idea. I think getting in advance is good, so that people can review it and hopefully move through it and ask questions more appropriately. Representative Leapley.
I have a quick question, I hope, and it's about the amendment that we just received. It says no charitable organization shall receive less than 35% of the gross revenues from any games of chance, minus any prizes paid. So any games of chance, including HHR? No.
No. Representative, thank you for the question. Games of chance has a specific meaning within the law, and that doesn't include historic horse racing.
Okay. And does this amendment make any statement about revenue generation for the state?
Yeah, I don't think it makes any changes, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to close the work session on SB 112. We'll now open the work session on SB 190. Any comments on SB 190? Yes, Senator Lang.
Thank you, members of the committee. So this bill basically creates a tax for online, what's called advanced deposit wagering. Another one you'll get in your primer possibly. But it basically is that in horse racing, you used to you could call in to a racetrack and place your bet. People don't call in anymore. They use an application on their phone, and this modernizes it. This is a request from Lottery and from the AG's office to modernize statute to bring it in so that those apps are considered within the terms of ADW, advanced deposit wagering. The one ask I would have is, if you pass this, is to amend it and drop the tax rate. We currently have a tax rate for in place, so people like the Brook currently pay this tax. And so rather than create two separate tax rates. So on this side of the aisle or the Republican side of the aisle, I'll argue that you're not creating a new tax. You're just conforming a tax with the industry. And on the left side of the aisle, you're just going to create new revenue that'll be available for education spending, which where the revenue goes from the state. So I'd ask you to drop the tax to 1.25, which creates a consistent tax rate, whether you're an in-person or an online gaming. That was it.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. I don't see the tax rate in here. I
I don't have a
believe-
copy of the bill, so
No,
I'm not
it's-
sure.
Well,
Line 12, I think they just said.
Page 2, line 12.
Oh, thank you. So it's 1.25?
So,
Right,
yeah,
what
change
he
it, move it
wants
down to
is
1.25, which would be consistent with existing law for in-person gaming operators. Charlie, is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Representative Ames.
Yeah, I'm a little confused as to what charitable games of chance would be subject,
So this isn't games of chance. This is strictly simulcast horse racing.
strictly simulcast.
Strictly
That's really what I
simulcast
was
horse.
getting at,
Yep.
yeah.
It's well, I should say simulcast. I think it also covers greyhounds. So it also covers the two locations we have that are licensed. So as you know, greyhound racing, we've outlawed in New Hampshire, we don't do. And we restricted the licenses and grandfathered in, and there's only two facilities left that can do, no, two.
One
There's
active.
Brook and Belmont are the two facilities that can do simulcast racing because they've had it. Right now, currently only the Brook does it. And so this would, again, apply to that simulcast horse racing, Churchill, watching the Kentucky Derby and be able to bet on the Kentucky Derby because it's outside of the provisions of sports gaming.
Representative Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. Would you be surprised if I told you there are outlets that have been taking these types of bets for over 2 decades? At this time, may not be taking them at this very moment, but have been taking these bets.
I understand there have been organizations that have been doing that, and the point of this law is to give the Attorney General something to enforce, because again, the issue from the Attorney General, my understanding was it's a gray area. They're not sure whether it's allowed or not allowed, and this just clarifies the law and makes it easier. Representative Malloy, you're killing me. Your light is on the other side. So you're killing, I just want you to kill your battery, that's all. So again, this was a clarification request. This was a housekeeping bill that it was happening in New Hampshire. There was a question whether it was legal, not legal, could they pursue them, not pursue them. And so the point of this bill was to clarify that law and to say, yes, in fact, it is legal, and yes, you are in fact subject to the tax, and to make it absolutely clear.
Follow up?
With all respect, I disagree with this being a housekeeping issue. What I believe, and if we wanted to, as an entity, take bets on horse racing, does that mean I can take a bet on horse racing? No, we have statute in place. And what I can tell you is I've met with the Attorney General. I've brought my concerns forward. I believe some of these entities that have been taking these bets, who have been bonusing these bets so people would bet with a platform rather than going to, at the time, Rockingham Park or Seabrook Park. And in my best estimation, and it's kind of kid from Lawrence math, in excess of tens and tens of millions of dollars in revenue that this state is owed. And it's my opinion that the Attorney General needs to do a dig into this, that we don't sweep this under the rug as a committee, and that we send this packing when we exec this bill, because I believe there's some issues that need to be addressed at the DOJ and need to be addressed directly specific to this particular piece of legislation.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, respond. So again, pursuant to our Constitution, we can't make a retrospective law. So we can't go back in time. And, it's that old saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? It was 10 years ago. We chose not to do that. We didn't do that. So now we draw a line in the sand and say, this is the issue. Whether or not someone was not complying with the law 10 years ago was completely up to the Attorney General irrespective of this law being passed. So if someone violated the law a year ago, they could still go after them for violating the law a year ago. That doesn't mean this bill is invalid. So I guess I just say that again, my point is I didn't plant the tree 10 years ago, so I'm planting the tree now just to do that housekeeping clarification and make it absolutely clear for the Attorney General.
Thank you. All right, I am going to, if there's no other questions, I'm going to end the work session on SB 190. Okay, now what I'd like to do is have a caucus. Next is the execing these bills. We already know that we cannot exec SB 112 because we have an amendment that we would have public hearing on, and we'll do that at our next meeting. So the other three bills we possibly can exec. So I want to have a Republican caucus, and I think Susan Almy would like a Democratic caucus. So it's 11:25. Let's try to be back here at, we need 15 minutes. We probably need 20. Let's be back here at 1:15 sharp because we don't want to, if we can get this all done and not go to lunch and come back, I'm sure you all would like that. So let's be prompt and be back here at 11:15. So we'll be back. Thank you.
Where are we going next door?
Right, the time being 5 of 12 now, let's get started. I'm going to open the exec session on HB 450. Representative Schaumburg, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to approve House Bill 450 relative to removing the net operating loss deduction limit on taxable income under the business profits tax.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, any discussion?
The only discussion that I think that we
Yeah,
had
that-
was
You can-
in,
Did
I'm
you want
sorry,
to move,
did you
did you want to move an amendment?
I'm sorry. I'd like to move the amendment to 2023-2272H. If I got that right, yes.
Seconded.
And would you like to speak to your motion?
Just very quickly, what this amendment does, it removes the 80% limit on net operating loss and moves it back to the original 100%. And it keeps in place the 10-year limiting period, and the amount that can be carried forward is 10 million.
Thank you. And I'd also just like to mention that I am, as the author of the other three amendments, I am withdrawing Amendment 2273H, 2274H, and 2290H. So we are only looking at 2272. Any other comment, Representative?
Yes, just as an observation, Amendment 2272H follows the same purpose as the underlying bill regarding the 80% limit being restored to 100% where it was prior to 2018. But it also addresses the DRA's concern that we do not limit it purely to C corporations. And that's clarified in the amendment.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's clarified lines 28 and 29.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, the clerk will take the
26,
roll.
actually.
Yes, Mr.
On-
Chair.
On the amendment.
This is a vote on Amendment 2272H for 450FN. I'll ask Chairman Janinigian how he votes.
Yes.
Representative Ullery,
Yes.
Representative Doucette,
Yes.
Representative Spilsbury,
Yes.
Representative Platt votes yes. Representative Bogert,
Yes.
Representative Sodi,
Yes.
Representative Ors,
Yes.
Representative Rochefort,
Yes.
Representative Almy,
Yes.
Representative Ames,
Yes.
Representative Southworth,
Yes.
Representative Malloy,
Yes.
Representative Schomburg,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Bolton,
Yes.
Representative Elbauer,
Yes.
Representative Leapley,
Yes.
Representative Smith is not here, correct? Jeffrey Smith is not here. Okay, and Representative Boyd.
Yes.
So that's 19-0, one not voting.
The vote being 19-0, is there any, can we put it on consent, or do we have any objections to that?
We have to do it again.
I'm sorry, right, let's do the bill first. Thank you. All right, so the amendment being passed and the bill itself, do we have any comment on the bill itself? Of course, which is actually the amendment because it's been replaced in full. So I'm going to assume there's no questions and the clerk will take the roll.
I have to take the roll even though I know the outcome. Representative Janigian,
Yes.
Representative Ullery,
Yes.
Representative Doucette,
Yes.
Representative Spilsbury,
Yes.
Representative Platt votes yes. Representative Bogert,
Yes.
Representative Sodi,
Yes.
Representative Ors,
Yes.
Representative Rochefort,
Yes.
Representative Almy,
Yes.
Representative Ames,
Yes.
Representative Southworth,
Yes.
Representative Malloy,
Yes.
Representative Schomburg,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Bolton,
Yes.
Representative Alberger,
Yes.
Representative Leapley,
Yes.
and Representative Boyd.
Yes.
Did I miss somebody? 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, yeah, I did. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 to 0. One not voting.
Thank you. The vote being 19-0 now, does anyone have any objections to the consent calendar?
Yes.
Did you have a, yeah, Representative Almy?
This does take a little bit of money away, so I think that it has to be on regular calendar.
Okay.
You could check on
We
that.
we can check on that.
Okay.
All right, we'll check on that. All right, we will close the exec on HB 450. We're going to open the exec session on HB 494 and recognize Representative Almy.
Thank you. I'd like to move on, ought to pass on HB 494 FN. And
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Who seconded?
Hamburg.
Okay.
Representative Schamberg.
And then move the amendment HB to HB 494, number 2342H.
All right. Do we have a second on that amendment?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. On the amendment clarifies the situation of a key fund inside of the Department of Agriculture, which is meant to deal with agricultural product testing and registration testing and field inspection issues. A lot of this is not going on at this point because of confusion within the funds. There is on the dedicated fund that is now called the Agricultural Product and Scale Testing Fund has not done scale testing for quite a long time. And it also is not doing a lot of the work that needs to be done to test and guarantee the contents of pet food in cans, the contents of animal feed, the contents of fertilizers and liming and other soil amendments, which is a major part of the work of a normal Department of Agriculture. It also has a large reserve of 1.25 million at this point, if you take away the money that was spent out of it last year for animal database. But that money would disappear fairly quickly if they were not added to it on the two small funds in here, the in on 431.4 and for 431 6, I believe it is. I've got to check on those. They add up to considerably less than $1 million, but adding them to this newly named fund, Agricultural Products Regulatory Fund, will allow the fund to continue to match expenditures with revenues. And they were part of the original bill, which was to create a totally new fund to do what was supposed to be done in this fund. And the other thing that this does is to write into law for the first time the actual purpose of this fund, in addition to renaming it to reflect that purpose. So it simplifies things, and it challenges the Department of Agriculture to start building up the databases they need to free up their staff to work in the fields and in the manufacturing industry, food manufacturing industries, to do the inspection and supervision and testing that they should be doing. So that's.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none.
Can
the
I
clerk will-
just clarify
oh,
some?
Yes.
So Representative Almy, am I understanding it correctly? We're not creating a new fund. We're relabeling and explaining an existing fund,
Exactly.
but we're also broadening it by directing 3 additional sources of revenue that previously have gone to the general fund will now be added to that pot.
It's 2 additional sources of revenue. And I've got to, oh, here it is. On section 2 and section 3, line 13, amend 431.4.2 to move that money in. And both of these are concerning fertilizer and soil amendments. And the section 3, amend 431.6 to read as follows, that they're going to deposit that into there. At this point, those are both going to the general fund, but they are collected from companies, I believe it's all companies, that are actually creating fertilizer and creating soil amendments.
Okay. And the
So,
fee's under 4 as well, right?
and I need to look it up again, but in the dedicated fund book, they've been well, they aren't in the dedicated fund book, but it was in one of our, I think here, it's in the original fiscal note. They bring in a total each year of $385,000. So they are not much of a loss to the general fund. And they are the tonnage registration program for soil and plant. I'll look them up. And the fertilizer registration program and the liming registration program. There are 3 of them. 2 of them must be in the same section. But I'll get that clear.
All right, Representative Ors.
So just so I understand, the 2 new funds are, one's for the database, money's going to the
No.
database?
No, the database was settled last year. The commissioner got a bill through to take $250,000 out of this fund that we are renaming to be used in creating the dog registration database. Once they've got that database up, it's a template for the rest of the department to start to create databases for fertilizer and liming, to create a database over in pest control. And I personally expect that they will use parts of that 1,025,000 that's left in end of year balance each year to create those databases so that they can modernize the department.
Very good. Thank you.
It sounded, the gentleman that was talking with us before is the head of the Regulatory Bureau, which is the one that is responsible for all of this.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no more questions, the clerk will take the roll on amendment 2342H.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Janigian,
Yes.
Representative Ullery,
Yes.
Representative Doucette,
Yes.
Representative Spilsbury,
Yes.
Representative Platt votes yes, Representative Bogert,
Yes.
Representative Sodi,
Yes.
Representative Ors,
Yes.
Representative Rochefort,
Yes.
Representative Almy,
Yes,
Representative Ames,
Yes.
Representative Southworth,
Yes.
Representative Malloy,
Yes.
Representative Schomburg,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Bolton,
Yes.
Representative Elberger,
Yes.
Representative Leapley,
Yes.
and Representative Boyd.
Yes.
19-0 and 1 not voting.
Okay. The amendment passes. Now, again, this amendment is a replace all, so I'm assuming no one else has any comments, so the clerk will take the roll.
Yes, again, I have to, even though I know the outcome.
You're pretty smart.
Representative Janigian, Chairman Janigian,
Yes.
Representative Ullery,
Yes.
Representative Doucette,
Yes.
Representative Spilsbury,
Yes.
Representative Platt votes yes, Representative Bogert,
Yes.
Representative Sodi,
Yes.
Representative Ors,
Yes.
Representative Rochefort,
Yes.
Representative Almy,
yes,
Representative Ames,
Yes.
Representative Southworth,
Yes.
Representative Malloy,
Yes.
Representative Schomburg,
Yes.
Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Bolton,
Yes.
Representative Elberger,
Yes.
Representative Leapley,
Yes.
and Representative Boyd.
Yes.
19-0, 1 not voting.
All right, the vote being 19-0, any objections to consent? Yes, Representative Almy,
Could
turn
you
your
check-
microphone on.
Could you check with the clerk about whether 385,000 is enough that it needs to be on the regular calendar?
All right, so
Yes, if allowed.
what
Is it required to be on the regular calendar?
So you're asking, is there a threshold by which if we go over, then
Yeah,
285,000?
yeah. Well, we know the other one has, we have an undefinable, actually, fiscal note on the other one. We don't know how much it could cost.
But on this one, isn't the cost, it's from the general fund?
It's from the general fund, yes.
Okay.
So maybe I should have tried to check with the clerk beforehand, but I'm not sure.
And Representative Almy will write the committee report.
You'll write the committee
Oh,
report?
yes, all right.
Okay, we'll close the exec session on HB 494. As far as SB 112 goes, we established earlier during our work session that we need to do a public hearing. So we will not exec SB 112 at this time. At our next meeting, which we're planning on being our last for this year, we'll have a public hearing and then we'll exec SB 112. Any question? Yes, Representative Ames.
Just, I expect to do an amendment to 112 also
Okay.
that will be narrow and specifically focused on the moratorium issue and the license transfer issue that we discussed. I guess it's important to know what the deadline is because you need to have that amendment when we go to that. When are you? Can I ask when we might be meeting?
It's looking like we're probably going to meet 3 weeks from now on November 9th.
Okay. Yeah. that'll be fine for, I'm sure.
Yeah. And that would be our last meeting, so we'll need to finish all business.
Hmm.
All right, any other comments before I move on to SB 190? Okay. Seeing none, I will open the exec session on SB 190. And Representative Doucette, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ITL on SB 190.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I've spoken to it.
Okay. Any Representative Almy?
Thank you. I understand that Senator Lang is planning on putting in another bill about this in January. So we would have a second chance to discuss this. So we would have a second chance to discuss this.
If you vote ITL, the answer would probably be no, because you're going to have a position of ITL, but if you think it's
Okay.
then we get to look at the bill again.
Right. Well, then I would suggest, we have a number of questions about it because we don't really understand on who is betting where. I was under the impression that this includes any New Hampshire person who is establishing a bet with any of the three companies that had been doing this, and now two of them are still doing it, but it doesn't have to be done through the brook.
Think about answering your question, yeah. And similar sports betting application would allow geofence to state of New Hampshire.
Right. So I think that helps us a little, but we really wanted to see interim study or something similar on this bill. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak.
Who else? Do you want to speak to it, Fred?
Yeah, just to be clear, I think that there's some substantial issues with this legislation going forward, and we need to dig deeper than studying it. I think we need to send this out ITL, and we can come back and look at another piece of legislation. Again, the kick the can down the road approach, we need to stop doing that. This needs to be addressed. It's a true issue. It's my belief that this state is owed large revenues by some of these folks that have been taking these types of bets, and the AG of the state of New Hampshire needs to address this directly. And I think the best course of action is to ITL this piece of legislation.
Yes, Representative Almy.
Thank you. This is the first time I've heard in this room specified by anybody, well, that I've heard at all, on what issue might be involved. So you're talking about the past bets that people were doing under the federal law and that are still going on under the federal law by two companies that we should be able to recoup money from. Is that what you're saying?
Representative, I'm not an attorney, but what I can tell you is this. I know for decades, a certain entity was taking bets on simulcast racing, and they were not licensed in the state of New Hampshire to take bets on simulcast racing. Hard stop. We lost revenue in the neighborhood of whatever 1.25% of those millions and tens of millions of dollars were. And I believe it's the process that the AG should pursue that. I've met with the AG. It's going to be his decision at the end of the day, but I plan on being a loud proponent to pursue this. We are owed substantial revenue as a state. We're here to talk about revenue. In my humble opinion, we need to ITL this piece.
Representative Ors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thoughts are similar to Representative Doucette's, just in that if we are owed a large chunk of revenue due to sleight of hand where somebody wasn't playing fair, if we cannot keep them out of future business, I would think we should see this through and see if there is a chance to collect these revenues if they are as substantial as Representative Doucette seems to think they are.
Representative Almy.
Yes, I'm trying to understand, as I understand it, we have a situation where we've got three companies which have been taking bets under the federal law without a New Hampshire law. And those three companies realized somehow last year that they were supposed to be under the New Hampshire law. And two of them have just continued taking bets. And the third one, Churchill Downs, has suspended taking bets until this gets worked out. And the effect of not passing this now, or at least having a chance to look at it next year, would be that for 2 more years, this situation would continue. Those two other companies will be taking bets from New Hampshire, and the one, unless the Attorney General is a wizard and gets through things a lot quicker than they usually do, the other one, Churchill Downs, would continue to be suspended. And it suspended itself.
Representative Doucette.
And not to name specific vendors or what have you, but I would offer that it's been a lot longer than the last year that they knew this was going on. And one would have to ask themselves, why would you stop doing something that you've been doing for decades because a piece of legislation was submitted? Okay, I think ITLing this puts the fire to the feet of the AG's office and the DOJ's office to get something done for the state. So I'm not sending a muted message to the industry. What I'm saying is this: we're owed. It's our Attorney General's job to pursue that, and it needs to be pursued. I've known about it for a number of years, and it keeps getting swept away, and all of a sudden this legislation pops up this session.
Yes, Representative Southworth.
Thank you. Would this also be able to be addressed through the commission? Not at all. I don't mean the owing the money. I mean clarifying some of the items in the bill.
It's not charitable.
It's not, okay. Just wanted to make sure about that.
Representative Platt.
Yes, I'm no attorney, but if we were to pass this legislation, then the Attorney General pursued it in court. The courts could say, well, you got law now, so it's moot. And so we could lose that revenue.
Representative Almy.
It does seem to me that we've only got we've only stopped, because it stopped itself, one of the three on groups that is benefiting by not paying attention to the New Hampshire law. And is the Attorney General going to, in response to this, stop the other two?
Representative
If
Doucette.
I may, I can't speak for the Attorney General. I've met with the Attorney General, brought this issue. The clock is ticking. Others have brought this to his attention. And I think a clear statement from this committee to the Attorney General might send that message a little clearer.
Representative Ors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just wondering if anybody's gotten any feedback, maybe Senator Lang even, as to whether or not the Attorney General plans to do anything, take action, or?
Let's keep the discussion in the committee. Representative Doucette has been talking to the Attorney General's office. Anything else? Anything else? Yes.
Is there a way to open up a discussion and or negotiations with these other two and maybe the one that has suspended their own activity and see if it's worth pursuing?
That's up to the AG to do that. Okay. Anything else? All right, the clerk will take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll start with Chairman Janigian for ITL on SB 190 FN.
Yes.
Representative Ullery.
Yes.
Representative Doucette.
Yes.
Representative Spilsbury.
Yes.
Representative Platt votes yes. Representative Bogert.
Yes.
Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Ors.
Yes.
Representative Rochefort.
Yes.
Representative Almy.
No.
Representative Ames.
Yes.
Representative Southworth.
Yes.
Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Representative Schomburg.
No.
Representative O'Brien.
No.
Representative Bolton.
No.
Representative Elberger.
Yes.
Representative Leapley.
Yes.
Representative Boyd.
Yes.
So the vote is 15 for, 1 not voting.
Okay, the vote being 15-4, the ITL passes. And Representative Doucette, you'll do the blurb. Okay. So our next order of business, what's that?
I guess I will do a minority vote.
Okay.
Okay.
You're leaving for a while.
All right, Representative Almy will do a minority blurb. All right, next on the agenda is to schedule our next and final meeting.
One more question.
Yeah.
Representative Almy, you're going to be arguing interim study?
Yes, if I'm allowed to. I can't remember whether the clerk allows that or not.
All right, but that's what I'm putting for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, so as I said previously, our final meeting that we need to schedule, which I'm planning on November 9th, Thursday, November 9th. At that meeting, we will have a work session and exec HB 121, Worldwide Combined Reporting, of which Representative Spilsbury by then will have had the final 2 meetings and a decision there. HB 192, relative to the interest and dividends tax. HB 569, relative to the state education property tax. And I think Representative Ames, you are still waiting for a judgment from the court, which we still are still waiting for. And then, actually not last, because we'll probably do this one first, but SB 112 will have the public hearing first. We'll schedule a public hearing on that. We will exec that bill. That being our last meeting on the 9th, we need to exec everything left, which will be those 4 bills. So that will be November 9th. Time, probably 9:30 again, so we make sure that we can get through this and not have to go to lunch and come back. So our next meeting will be 9:30, November 9th. Okay, any comments, questions? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Just barely, right.